Now, as you might have heard, the arrival of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Nigeria is imminent. He touches down here in Abuja on Saturday. It's the first visit to Nigeria by Mr. Modi since he assumed office in 2014, and it marks nearly 18 years since any Indian Prime Minister visited this country. Nigeria is India's largest trading partner in Africa, with bilateral trade of nearly $12 billion in 2022. And Indian-owned companies are reported to be the second largest employer in Nigeria after the federal government. In the last decade or so, Narendra Modi has become one of the most influential leaders in the world, and India has risen to become not only a global economic and political power, but also a big player in a multipolar world with its own sphere of influence. Just a year ago, in an unprecedented feat of technological engineering, India's Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft successfully landed on the moon, making India only the fourth country to achieve this feat and the first to land in the lunar South Pole. So what is this visit by the Indian Prime Minister to Nigeria likely to mean for this country? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, Shri Balasu-Bramanian. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles, and namaste from India.
Namaste to you, and quite a long name you've got there, so I'm glad I practiced it a few times before coming on air.
Well, I do have half of Nigerian name, Bala.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, so that makes it just marginally easier.
Absolutely.
So what specifically brings your Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Nigeria this weekend?
My Prime Minister comes this weekend, and this is going to be the first visit of his to West Africa, and he starts with Nigeria. Nigeria has a very important role in Indian foreign policy in the sense that our focus on Nigeria is quite strong. You would perhaps know already that India opened its diplomatic office in Nigeria 2 years before your independence. And that is because our leadership realized the potential, the strength and the greatness of Nigeria. And that continues even today. That is why when we assumed the presidency of G20, my Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, had invited Nigeria as a guest country for G20 for the first time. So his focus on Nigeria...
And that was a personal invitation.
It was a very thought out invitation, personal invitation to bring Nigeria as a guest country to be on the table of G20.
But that was a strategic move as well, wasn't it?
The importance that my Prime Minister, my country attaches to its relations with Nigeria made it very as an easy choice for us to do so.
And I mean, beyond the sort of strategic, things that you were just mentioning, what sort of dynamics is there between Mr. Modi and Mr. Tinubu? They seem very cordial in the photo we saw. Are they friends, or is it all sort of incredibly formal and kind of friendly in front of the cameras, but a bit stodgy behind the scenes?
We were very happy to have His Excellency Mr. Tinubu visit India immediately after his swearing in. And since G20 was there and there was a personal meeting between Prime Minister and Mr. President, this follow-up visit is actually to follow up on the discussions that they have had at that point of time and to continue to strengthen the relations between the two countries. They had a long discussion and they had discussed as to how to collaborate and come closer, to make our countries come closer to each other. So this visit, I'm sure, was going to further strengthen that particular bond that they have forged during the visit of President Tinubu to India last September.
Right. And there are similarities, aren't there, in terms of the challenges that both India and Nigeria face, including, I heard you mention it somewhere else, it's a multi-religious, both societies are multi-religious, multilinguistic, multicultural, not to mention the monster in the room, which is extreme poverty, although I think Nigeria now has the distinction of exceeding India in that last category.
You are very right in the sense that both of our countries have many similarities, multilinguistic, and we are also large populations in our respective geographies. We have had a similar colonial past. and the struggle for independence have also been more or less parallel to each other. The growth trajectories have been more or less similar. We have also undertaken certain steps which has now helped us to reach the level of the 5th largest economy in the world. And we would be very happy to share those experiences and with Nigeria also, as with all our friends in the global south. So there is a lot of similarities, and Nigerians, we Indians over here feel at home in Nigeria. We have more than 50,000 of our compatriots working and serving in Nigeria in many parts of the country.
But of course, in spite of those similarities, I mean, you also mentioned the practical differences. I mean, India has become the 5th largest economy in the world, and whereas India is a parliamentary democracy, Nigeria is a presidential democracy. And in spite of its enormous population, India appears to be able to conduct free and fair elections. I mean, whereas Nigeria is still enormously challenged in that regard. How do you assess the evolution of democracy in Nigeria?
Well, democracy is certainly a growing thing. When India became independent, and from 1947 we have had several elections, we believe in diversity, unity in diversity. We believe in people coming together. In India, democracy is a celebration. Elections is a festival. And I'm sure with more time to go, the same kind of tradition will also come over here, and it is already, we can see that happening over here. The celebrating elections and bringing our elected people to the government is something that we are very confident of, and I'm sure that we will be able to share our experiences at any point of time.
Right. And in terms of the economy, what sort of investments does India have in Nigeria?
We have more than 200 Indian companies working in Nigeria for the past more than 3 or 4, 5 decades. The investments have been to the tune of about $27 billion. And as you had rightly pointed out in your preamble itself, Indian companies are the 2nd largest employers of Nigerians after the federal government. So there's a lot of impact that the Indian companies have been having, both in the manufacturing sector in almost every area, from oil to plastics to pharmaceuticals to engineering goods to so on and so forth. And not only on the economy, but also on the social life because of its employment with Nigerians. So there is a huge, Indian companies see the huge potential that Nigeria has offered and continues to offer. And we are also very happy that Nigerians have played a great host for the Indian companies to survive here.
Right. And clearly there aren't that many Nigerian companies in India, are there?
Oh, we are more than happy to welcome them.
And I expect there is a trade deficit between India and Nigeria that favors India, isn't there? Why do you think trade between the two countries is so tilted in favor of India beyond crude oil, which Nigeria exports a lot of to India?
True. The overall trade is actually in favor of Nigeria, I should say.
Well, that's because of oil.
That is because of oil, and because of some of the agricultural products also go to India.
Yeah, but the non-oil
sector, like for example, the pharmaceutical products, we do send a lot, and engineering goods is something that is part of it. So these are some of the areas in which Indian companies do have a strong presence in Nigeria, both in terms of investment as well as in terms of trade.
And also a lot of Nigerians go to India for healthcare treatments, don't they?
That is true, because India provides the best affordable and the most efficient way of treatment all around the world, I can certainly say so, because of the tertiary and the primary sector that has been developed in India. Lot many Nigerians do prefer to go to India for treatment, for medical treatment. There are also Indian hospitals which are here. There's a hospital which is coming up soon. It is already more or less ready. And one more hospital has been here for a few years. Some of the eye hospitals that are available in Nigeria are quite strong, whether it is Tulsi Chandra or whether it is Skipper IQ. So there are, and Indo Eye Care in Lagos, there are many of them. So health sector cooperation between our two countries is quite strong. And we hope that it will continue to grow further, including from the pharmaceutical sector.
Well, I mean, it sounds like obviously Indian companies and industries are more competitive than Nigeria's?
We are going where the opportunity presents, and we go where the host country is very welcoming.
What I'm wondering is whether or not Nigerian companies would be as welcome to India as Indian companies are in Nigeria.
Absolutely, it's a free market, and we would be more than happy to. There are many multinationals currently present in India. Many
Right.
companies which are outside. They do have a strong presence both in terms of back office or in terms of R&D or in terms of production. Today, India exports. At least 3 out of 4 smartphones that are being sold in the world is being manufactured in India, and these are all from outside things. We'll be more than happy to welcome the Nigerian companies to open shop and work with us and do business in India.
Right, and your main exports to Nigeria, you pointed out, were pharmaceutical products,
Engineering goods.
engineering, telecoms.
That's right. And also some of the, for example, the 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers that are there, the Okadas and the KKs, Bajaj and TVS.
So you've cornered that market as well. have you?
To some extent, we have been able to
Right.
coordinate with you.
Right, and India says it's trying to do things that are needed and required by Africa, not for India, although obviously the things you mentioned seem to, as I said, tilt in favor of India, certainly from an economic point of view. And they said they're prepared to assist Africa in the way Africa wants.
Absolutely.
What does that mean in practical terms?
Well, I can tell you 3 or 4 examples. My Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, in his visit in 2019 to Uganda, in the parliament speech, he had very clearly given the 10 basic principles of India's engagement, foreign policy with Africa, in which he very clearly pointed out, and that is what India has been following also, that Africa is a focus area, Africa is a priority. The priorities of Africa, of every man, woman and child of Africa would be what we would be working on. We won't be trying to say this year that you should do this or you should do that. Whatever your priorities are, and if we have the
It's a
capability...
bit like China then.
Whatever your priorities are, where we have the capability, we are more than happy to help, because we believe in what is called as Vasudeva Kudubakam, which means whole world is one family, and we cooperate on the concept of shared growth and shared prosperity. So, for example, we started something called, along with France in India, we have started something called as the International Solar Alliance, in which Nigeria is also a member of the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. There are many such initiatives that have been brought in, and Government of India has extended a lot of lines of credit to many African countries, including to Nigeria, for developing the renewable sector, for developing various other areas, whether it is gas-based or whether it is solar-based power sector. So that is there, and then we have been providing various other developmental assistance. We have been providing the capacity building of people. We train more than 500 Nigerians on an annual basis, and if you take care of the whole of Africa, it would run into thousands. So capacity building, these are some of the concrete areas in which I can say that it is just not a slogan, but actually something on the ground, a reality.
And in terms of Nigeria and African countries learning something positive from India, I mean, how did India go from where it was in the 1960s? Because I was reading that, I mean, India was sort of the famine capital of the world at the time. A lot of poverty, a lot of famine, and all the rest of it. What were the things that you did that managed to move you from that fairly sort of decrepit situation to being the 5th largest economy in the world and having the capacity to, you know, land a spacecraft on the moon?
I would say that it has taken us some time. It was not overnight. It took us about 40, 50 years to reach where we are. By concentrating on 5 basic areas, I would say. I mean, to simplistically put it, it is not something lean, it is not something one after the other consecutive, but simultaneously done. It's not a linear process. We concentrated on agriculture, providing food security to our people. We concentrated on educating our people. We concentrated on the health sector of the people. We concentrated on the MSMEs, because even today, 70% of our economy is run by our MSMEs. And then we concentrated on infrastructure, so that whatever a person who has been fed, who has been educated, who has been made healthy, who has been provided an employment opportunity, has the opportunity to sell his or her goods outside and within the country. So infrastructure. So these are the 5 areas in which our governments had concentrated, and that has helped us to propel the economy to where it is today.
And you remained consistent, and a necessary part of that consistency was political stability, isn't it?
We have been lucky, and we have been happy to have good political stability. Whenever there has been change of government also, there has been no problems, and democracy has taken with strong root because of our old tradition of democracy. India is the mother of democracy. There are...
it's the biggest democracy in the world.
It is the biggest democracy in the world, and also the oldest in terms of our scriptures, and others also point out to the fact that democracy was practiced even in ancient times. So, as mother of democracy, we had continued to... It was not difficult for us to adopt to the system after 1947 when we got independence.
Right, although to be fair, you have a caste system, and I'm not quite sure how democratic that is.
Well, caste system is a social issue. It is not a political issue. And that can happen, any kind of division within the society, whether it is in terms of tribes, whether it is in terms of language, whether it is in terms of race. All around the world, there are few areas, few countries which do not have any of such divisions within their own society. So we believe in unity in diversity, and in spite of the fact that there are, you name a religion, we have that religion in our country, which is being practiced peacefully, and they coexist together. So the divisions are certainly, sometimes it can be theoretical, sometimes it can be a different way. But whenever there are issues, we consider it as law and order situation, and there are areas and there are mechanisms which can take care of that. So this has never stopped India from growing.
Yeah, I think you made an important point there, which is that there are mechanisms. I would change that word and say there are institutions that are there. For example, the Muslims have quite a bit of a problem in India, but I mean, you just had recently the Supreme Court making decisions that strengthen the position of the Muslims in India. And that's why it's important, I believe, to have strong institutions. And that's certainly something that India has, isn't it?
The redressal mechanisms that have been constitutionally put in place have been strengthened by consecutive governments, and we are very happy that they function as they are expected to function.
And just returning to Nigeria and India, politically, there are geopolitical issues of the global south that unite the two countries as partners, isn't there?
Absolutely. I mean, after we took over as G20 presidency, my Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, had organized various virtual virtual summit of the Global South, and Nigeria participated in all the 3 editions of that VOGSS, as we call it. As members of Global South, we realize the requirement that each of these countries have, because we have also grown exactly in the same manner. We have also faced similar problems. We have experiences that can certainly be shared with others, so that they need not do the same kind of...
make the same mistakes.
Make the same mistakes in one way, to put it in one way. So, as part of the Global South, we understand these requirements, we understand the priorities of each of the countries, and we are happy to share. And therefore, between Nigeria and India, there are more similarities than we can actually see on the surface.
And India seems to have this great fidelity to remaining a non-aligned country. I mean, but you're a member of BRICS. And BRICS has...
So is Nigeria a partner country?
Yeah, it's a partner country, but I mean, India is a sort of foundational member. And Russia is a member of that group, and China is a member of that group. And they have issues with the Western world. India is kind of straddling the middle there. And Russia wants some slightly more extreme measures and things to be done fairly quickly to try and, create greater independence and a greater political challenge, if you like, and economic challenge to the West. One of the things that is talked about is de-dollarization. What is India's position on that?
When you talked about non-alignment, yes, we firmly are non-aligned. By non-aligned doesn't mean that we do not support anybody, anything at any point of time. It is the choice, it is the independence of our foreign policy. As my foreign minister, Mr. Dr. Jaishankar, has very eloquently put, we have choices to make, and we do make those choices. And when we have choices, it is very important for us to choose based on the national interest. So within BRICS or wherever, we have our relationship with one country certainly does not have an impact on our relationship with the other country. We deal with them independent of each other, and therefore we do not have any problems. As far as de-dollarization is concerned, that is something which journalists actually use much more than what it is actually on the ground. There's obviously not any concept of de-dollarization from India, obviously. But see, when nations interact with each other, they would always keep their national interest as the prime focus.
Indeed.
And move according to that. So where it suits the requirement of the national interest to align with every country would align with it. So that is where we have.
So are you aligning with it then?
We are aligning with the independence of choosing our foreign policy.
That's a very diplomatic answer, isn't it? And let me return to your specific area, which is Nigeria. In terms of your own specific role as Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, as far as that is concerned, what are your priorities here? Where would you like to take the relationship between India and Nigeria?
I would certainly like to strengthen the relationship both economically and at the people-to-people contact. Governments are aligned to each other. Our priority areas are very clearly defined. We would like to come closer to each other in terms of whether it is economic development and more interaction between our two companies, Nigerian and Indian companies. Agriculture is a new area where we are looking at the possibility. Mining is another area. Space cooperation, as you very clearly mentioned, is another area. There's already an existing collaboration between Indian Space Research Organization and NASARDA of Nigeria on cyber security, so on and so forth. The digital economy, digital public infrastructure is something in which India is very strong. We have already offered the India Stack to Nigeria. So we would be happy to continue that negotiation and bring that on the ground. We are also, in terms of health sector, that is another area where a new hospital is actually coming up in Abuja, and that's a conglomerate which will be going around to other geopolitical areas also. Health sector is another area. So these are some of the areas in which we have been working closely with our Nigerian friends in realizing the potential both our countries have in cooperating.
And that is an area that you personally, as High Commissioner, those are areas you want to leave as your legacy here.
Absolutely, and we have been working on it.
Right, okay. And beyond that, just on a social level, I mean, what are your favorite foods in Nigeria?
Oh, there are too many similarities between our two cuisines, I would say. Your jollof rice is something what we call in India as a tomato rice.
Okay.
Your goat meat soup is something, of course, you have a lot of meat in it.
You have your curried goat and all the rest of it.
You have a lot of meat in it, we have a lot of water in it, of course. Your akada is something what we also have. Your masa is called as idli in India. Your ofada rice is something that is being used in southern part of India. So there are many similarities, and I have tasted everything. Your amala, I have tasted that. Your cassava. Millets is something which is common to both our countries. So tapioca, cassava, all these things. So there are many similarities, and I have been feeling at home here.
Well, I'm sure your Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, will also be very welcome when he arrives here on Saturday. I want to thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us. Shri, and Shri, by the way, is a kind of title, isn't it?
No, Shri is just a Mr.
Yeah, but it's a sort of, it's got some connotations behind it beyond just being Mr., isn't it?
Well, it's a Hindi version of Mr.
Okay.
I would say that.
Well, Shri G. Balasu-Bramanian, I want to thank you very much indeed for coming in. And he is, of course, the Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much, and namaste once again from India.
Namaste to you.